Hi, welcome to Talkin Business. I'm Joe Catrambone, CEO of the Stewart Martin County Chamber of Commerce. It's my pleasure to have one of our members, our trustee members, uh, with me today, John Rayan. John, welcome.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Appreciate being here.
We like to highlight our trustees whenever we can. So we're working our way through. Well, I think we have 90 trustees, and you may be the fourth.
Okay,
So we
nice.
got a long way
So I'm
to
at
go.
the top of the list, is what you're saying.
Absolutely, yes, you are. Well, you're a tenant in our building, you're our neighbor, and so one of the things, John, I always like to find out from our guests is how did you end up in Stewart and Martin County? I mean, it's such a little speck on the map, and it's an out of the way place. We're not a tourist related area per se. So how did you end up in Stewart?
So I actually moved to Stewart back in 1984. I was going into seventh grade, and my dad got a job down in Florida. We moved down from Michigan, and we spent the summer down in Boca. And he was asking around, like, where should he go to, where should we move, raise my family, that kind of stuff. And everybody kept telling him, you should look at Martin County, great school system, nice pace of life, nice area and stuff like that. And so we came up there, and they fell in love with it. And so that's where we settled. We settled in Palm City, and went to Martin County High School, Stewart Middle School, and that's how I ended up there. Then I went off to college, and I lived off in Jacksonville, and I was down in Hollywood for a while. And never thought I would move back to Martin County, but then when my girls were starting to get a little bit older, kind of ironically enough, my oldest was going into middle school, and I was like, we should move back to Stewart and back to Martin County and take advantage of the schools and stuff like that.
It's a great place to raise a family.
And it's a great place to raise a family, and then also just a great place to live in general. I mean, you've got the water, you got the beaches, you got great people, that kind of stuff. So it's a great place to live.
Well, yeah, and I always tell people too, and it's the location it's wonderful. I mean, we're less than 2 hours out of Miami, less than 2 hours out of Tampa, less than 2 hours out of Orlando. So you've got this rural lifestyle, but yet if you want nightlife, if you want the big city life, you're not that far away from it. Not if you want to live in it, but if you like nightlife and that type of stuff, you're not that far away from really a great location.
Exactly. And then the city has grown, right?
Oh,
I mean,
gosh.
the county has grown quite a bit. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember, when I first moved here, like, all those developments on Martin Downs Boulevard, it was all trees.
Yeah, yeah.
And you
Exactly.
drive around, and
It
I'm
was
like,
a pasture.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so now I drive around different places, and I'm like, wait a minute, where did that come from, right?
Yeah.
That you just because you're used to the trees and that kind of stuff all over the place.
Well, I always use this from 80 to 90. We went from 50,000 to 100,000 people. We doubled our population from 80 to 90. And from 90 till today, we've grown less than 2% a year. Yet a lot of you'll hear people say, oh, this place is growing exponentially and it's crazy. And it has grown. And of late, I know the county's
Right.
working on it, but of late, our road systems are not handling
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
influx.
It's not caught up.
I mean, I used to be able to play stickball on County Highway. I forget it now. I can't get out of the driveway.
Well, so,
You know,
yeah, I was telling Arlene the other day, I'm like, I used to be able to drive from Palm City to the beach anytime I wanted, didn't matter what time of day, we had like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And now it takes me 20 minutes to get from Palm City to like US 1.
and get over the bridge. Yeah.
But it's good growth. I mean, it's a lot of positive changes have come into the county. A lot of different things, different activities for people to do. So I think it's overall, I think it's been a nice job of managing the growth and growing the county.
Years ago, I would have these young kids come in, they're college, just graduated college, young people with this great resumes and all. And I'd say to them, we don't have industry here. And here's what would get them. At the time, we were between Palm Beach and Martin County were the highest per capita income counties in the state of Florida. Later on, the Naples of West Coast came in. So,
Right.
but it's still between the three of us. Who's the highest per capita income? So they would see this highest per capita income. I'd say our highest per capita income is the millionaires who come here and visit or have summer homes and put their money in the banks. But but otherwise, we don't have that kind of industry here. All we had was Grumman.
Mm-hmm.
That was about it. But we still don't. Most of our businesses are home owned
Yeah.
or family owned type small businesses. So
Yeah, and it's always growing up. It was always like all my friends, their parents were either doctors or attorneys,
yeah,
or
or they had their
CPAs
own
or something like that.
business.
Had their own
Yeah,
business.
yeah.
They would be a construction company. So that's kind of like moving back. I kind of knew, that was going to be the case unless I wanted to commute. Now, when I first moved back, I commuted to Boca every day because I had a great
Oh.
opportunity down there. But after that got old, I was like, all right, I got to jump off, and I
Was
got to.
95 through then?
Yeah,
Was
when
it?
we first moved here, no, 95 was not open, but we used to drive on it. I don't know if I should say that, but we used to get on Fort Pierce, and my dad was like, "Oh, just keep going," and we would drive, be the only one on the road, but it was one of those things. But yeah, so when I moved back in 2012, I commuted for a couple of years, and then I kind of jumped off and started doing my own consulting practice and stuff like that. And since I have my CPA, I started doing, kind of launching that and growing it. And then intermittently in between there, I've had clients that are like, hey, we need you to come on full time to take on a project. And, one of them was a railroad out in Louisiana. And I was like, hey, I'll do it, but I'm not moving. Right. I like where I live. I like, that kind of stuff. And so I traveled back and forth to Louisiana for a number of years, growing that business out there and kind of cleaning it up, rebuilt the railroad and repaired relationships within the state, with community leaders and local government and state government and actually national government too, and turned it around and accomplished the mission of taking it to sale and getting rid of it, in a positive outcome for the private equity firm that owned it. So, those type of projects come along, and those are, I enjoy that kind of stuff, but I also just like helping with like small businesses, right? And that's one of the things that I do now is a lot of like startups, a lot of people that are just getting started with their consulting practice or their management practice or, their, service business, whether it's in, like a trade or something like that, and just helping them kind of navigate the waters of not only just compliance aspect of it, but like helping their business streamline and grow and look at it from that standpoint.
Yeah, that's what I like to do. And obviously we're very similar. Obviously you have your own clients, but so many people. I enjoy that when people come in, they're just starting a business. They come in, sit down with the chamber, and it's not that I'm telling them how to run their business, but the intricacies of working your way through Martin County and the idiosyncrasies and the political climate and things of that nature. So what basically, I think you kind of aligned. Give me a sketch of your typical client.
So my typical client it's really kind of varies, right? So I've had larger companies like the railroad that had to go in and clean up and rebuild infrastructure and stuff like that, restructure it from the standpoint of like when I started with them, they had less than a half a month's worth of cash on hand at any point in time. So we were literally going like week to week trying to figure out, okay, we're going to make payroll. And then it was like, okay, developing a plan from there, looking at cost, analyzing it, and saying, okay, if we cut here, how is that going to impact us? It's like, why are we not performing this maintenance or doing, something of that nature? And the excuse was, well, we don't have the money. And I go, but you find the money when you have a derailment and you have to spend $100,000 to re-rail some cars, right? So let's take that money and put it in the infrastructure, developed a plan for that. But then it's, each client is different, right? So I've got some that are just starting out and what they need are just kind of like almost like putting, some kind of pathway in place for them, and others where I come in and I'm a second set of eyes. I look at, what they're doing, which contracts they're negotiating. I'll help them sit down kind of as a member of the team and sit in on the calls and help them negotiate contracts and make sure that they're getting a fair deal for themselves. If they're looking at buying a business, looking at the financial statements and saying, okay, are these add backs that the seller is giving you, are they legitimate, or are you going to have to incur those costs going forward? Because of the experience that I've had in the M&A world, and things of that nature, looking at real estate projects and, the feasibility of it and saying, okay, you have a lot of deferred maintenance in here, or you've got, under market rents, or your rents are over market, so you're really kind of overpaying, and you're going to have a hard time when these leases renew because your rents are going to go down, by and large, and just things of that nature. Other times it's just sitting down and talking to the people in the organization as a whole, and identifying maybe you got a set of great people that you work with, and maybe they're not quite doing the things that they're strongest at, right? So maybe they're doing a function that's taking up all of their time, that's taking away from something that they're really good at. You might have your marketing person doing some admin work, and that's taking away from them going out into the community and marketing and selling and really growing your business, because they're bogged down in this admin over here. And sometimes it's like just reorganizing the deck of where you're spending your money, and then it just kind of takes off in a different light, and in your business will take off and become more profitable and grow.
So you do a deep dive into the whole operation.
Yeah.
I mean, do you even take a look at their facility, and maybe their offices aren't positioned correctly, or I mean, is it that?
From a logistical standpoint within that manufacturing facility or something like that? Typically not something that I typically do on a engagement basis.
So it's mostly
But
fiscal.
It's more fiscal and operational, because like it depends on like so the sorry, I got distracted here with
Yeah, me too.
but anyway, so we so like when I was the CEO of the railroad, it was everything, right? It was operational. It was, so I dove into everything, right? It was like, I don't know how many miles of track I walked, right? And when I was running a railroad services tie reclamation and recycling company, it was the same thing. I set up a plant to recycle railroad ties and to grind them up and sell them off as fuel. So it just really depends on what it is you want me to do, right? And I'm versed enough in operations and finance that I can marry the two together and be strategic about it and say, hey, look, you should grow this way, or you should think about this. Now, ultimately, you're the business owner, right? So you're making the decisions, and I can only recommend, right? And so part of my job is to also tell you, no, you shouldn't do that, right? And here's why I don't think you should do that. I mean, I've had clients that are like, they're going through and they're like, well, we're going to sell this one facility over here. And I'm like, then you're leaving yourself exposed over here, and you shouldn't do that, right? Because then you have these business risks and things of that nature, and you're going to struggle later on down the road. And, and then it's up to them to kind of, to make that decision. Part of it's on me, though, to explain it well enough that they see those risks. Now, if they just want to take the risk, that's up to them. But so I can do a little bit of everything. Kind of a Swiss Army knife. I've got a couple of clients that are startups, a couple in the software as a service industry, and really kind of sitting down and thinking from an internal control standpoint, and how all of the information flows through all the APIs and all that stuff to come into, the finance side of it, and then also how can we digitally market and things of that nature. And then I've got another client where we're going to do a roll-up strategy of industrial companies, kind of like infrastructure firms that are doing like road work or like underground cables, things of that nature, that are kind of cash flowing, and kind of take it from a financial arbitrage standpoint, roll them up and then take them, so that way when you aggregate them together, the risk goes down and you create more value that way. So
how did you get the knack to be able to do this? What was your background, your experience, to be able to go in and take a look and delve into, or do a deep dive into an operation and say, this is wrong and that's wrong?
Mm-hmm. So I've always been like, as a person, kind of on the entrepreneurial side, right? So growing up, didn't have a lot of money. My parents, didn't have a lot of money. So it was like, hey, you want to do something, you got to go out and pay for it, right? So I had to figure it out. So, I had started with a lawn service business. I would go out and my dad was like, all right, well, you can cut all the lawns in the neighborhood you want, but you got to cut ours, right? So I'll buy the lawnmower for you. And so I went out and I cut people's yards during Florida, fortunately, it grows, most of the year. So I had a pretty steady business, and I always did like 2 or 3 jobs at the same time. Went off to school, got involved in it, and just talking to people, right? It was like I talked to my brother-in-law and my sister who are CPAs, about what it's like for that, and what insights that offers somebody is coming up who wants to be an entrepreneur and understanding the numbers as well as the business. And so I went that route, and I was able to work with a lot of small businesses and large businesses and understand like what they were looking for from their business standpoint. Because I always asked more than just the numbers. I wasn't just focused on the numbers on the paper. I was like, what are you doing to grow your business? And just kind of sitting down and talking to it, just much like this conversation. And so always kind of focused on the bigger picture and understanding their risks of their business and what they did to overcome it. And then in some cases, it was like, some of the greatest success stories you have are somebody comes along, you're rocking along, and then there's an opportunity, right, for you to take on a business or something at growth, and you got to be able to seize the moment for that, right? You got to be able to figure out how to capitalize on that, and that's where the bigger successes come. And there's a number of different places, and like in the M&A, when I did a lot of M&A work, and I still do some fair amount, I'd go out to like Wyoming, and I'd sit down and talk with a guy who started with one truck, and he was in the oil services industry, and he's like, yeah, I had it too, and he's like, I'm not that smart, and all this. And I'm like, look, you can't build this business if you're not smart, right? And so just sitting down and talking to them and understanding how they went about that business, right? And it was just some of it's taking risk, right? Because you can't grow without taking risk, and you've got to take smart risks. So it's, you kind of got to, there's not a build it, they will come. There's not a, get them and then you build it. It's, you got to kind of marry the two, and you got to be opportunistic when you do it. So for me, it was just sitting down and talking to people, and I still continue to do it because that's where you learn. Then you learn from other people's success stories, but then also you learn from their mistakes. I mean, I have a lot of people that I've sat down and talked to, and like, I can tell you stories of, people who got involved in lawsuits and where they could have jumped off the lawsuit route and settled, and pride gets in the way, and then they lose tenfold of when the case goes to trial because something happened and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's just talking to people and understanding the businesses, and then just following what's going on in the market. Some of it is intuitive. I mean, I've always been able to kind of look at things and analyze them and be like, yeah, that doesn't really sound right. It might be too good to be true, and kind of steer myself away from it. Sometimes I've missed because, it didn't quite feel comfortable, maybe because I didn't ask the right questions or it wasn't explained properly. Or sometimes it's just, you're not interested in that, and you just move on and kind of like focus on what your, true passion is.
Aside from financial problems,
Mm-hmm.
putting that aside, what is the most other problem than financials? Is it organization? Is it client base? Is it customer service?
So usually, a lot of times what I see is a lack of clear leaders, like not clear leadership, but the like if it's a small business and it's dominated by one guy, right, who started the business and is growing it, he's good at what he does, but he or she, he's got to be able to and be comfortable in starting to delegate once you get to a certain level, because you can't do everything, because if you're trying to do everything, everything suffers type of deal. So then you got to start surrounding yourself with the right people to grow, right? And a lot of people look at, the finance arm and that type of stuff as a cost center, because it's not forward facing, it's not generating, revenue per se, but it can save you a lot of money if you got the right people in there that can understand the numbers and can tell you, hey, we should be running X% of sales and marketing, and our marketing is at, it should be 10% and it's at 20%. We're not being efficient there. Things like understanding those numbers, not just saying, here's your financials on a monthly basis, and it's not just downloading the transactions out of the bank and putting it in to an income statement. The finance arm really should be looking at it and interpreting the financial statements and talking with everybody in the organization that that reports in there, right? So all your heads of your departments should be understanding their numbers. And if I sit down with somebody in that's running a division, or is the general manager of something, or maintenance away or whatever, and he can't explain to me what the numbers are and why the costs are the way they are, then that's a huge flag that you're trying,
Yeah.
and then it's like, okay, why is this guy not understanding the numbers, or is there something else going on there? And then you got to kind of dig in. The thing that I always sit there and I always hate when people tell me is, oh, it's always done this way, or this is the way everybody does it.
No, I always did it that way.
We don't use it. Nobody in the industry uses this piece of equipment, and then eventually they figure out, well, if I tell you that, John, you're going to go out and prove me wrong. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, because I'm going to dig it up and do my research.
So how do you, we're winding down, so let's talk about if someone watching wants to determine if they could afford you. How do you base your fee?
So
Is it an hourly or?
So typically, a lot of projects I bill hourly. Others, it's like if it's going to be more involved and it's going to be more recurring and a longer term project, I will work up a fee based on like a monthly fee for the project, right? So if it's going to be like a 6-month project, and they want to talk about, we're going to do this project, it could be, X number of hours a month is what they want, and then I'll work up a fee based on an hourly, and I usually come up with something that works for them.
So typically, how many? I know this is broad based, but typically, how many weeks, months, or does the average client stay with you?
So I've got clients that I've been with for years, 3-4 years. I worked with the railroad before we sold it for like 7.
7 years?
Yeah, started as just a fractional kind of CFO. The guy needed somebody to interpret the numbers and present them to the private equity group, because he couldn't, there was a communication barrier there with what they wanted and what he was telling them.
Now, did you? I mean, 7 years, but you had other clients.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't hone in on just one. So
Right. Yeah, and so then but when I started, it was only 10 hours a week, something like that, right? And so it was just a kind of a contracted thing of like, hey, I need you to sit on these calls and do these things and make sure the numbers get there. And so that was my role, right? And over the course of time, that role expanded because I asked too many questions. But then I've got clients that, others that it kind of ebbs and flows. And it just depends on the client need, right? I've had clients that may not be active clients right now, but they're like, hey, we want to keep you in the loop, so that way when something does happen, we can call you and bring you back. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, right? It's kind of based on what the client needs and what the customer needs, because I don't want to be the reason why you're not succeeding, right? And so,
Yeah, that's right.
and so I'm here to bring you to whatever it is that you want.
To success.
Yeah, I want to give you the tools to arm yourself to be successful.
Is there anything we missed you might want the viewers watching to know?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. Like, I mean, my passion is kind of on that side, right? It's kind of digging in. It's kind of understanding what the business is doing. What could it be doing? What is your goal, right? What is your goal with your business? If you want to exit in 5 years, you got to start succession planning now, right? So that way you have people in place, so that way when you sell your business, there's an orderly transition, and it's not just Joe who has his fingers in everything, and that you're really the business. You want the business to be something outside of you and kind of growing in a living organism that's going to kind of continue to grow from that standpoint. So you got to start thinking about that, because it's I don't say it's easy, but it's easy to buy a business or get into business. It's hard to exit and maximize your value at the end, because you've got to be able to tell that story and communicate what the value of the business is to the person buying it. Then you got to set it up in the best light possible. And then conversely, when I look at it from the buy side, I'm looking for those reasons why I'm telling you need to set all this up to kind of knock the price down a little bit.
Yeah, you wear a couple of different hats.
Yeah, and get a better deal for you.
Good.
So,
Thank you.
Pleasure, Joe.
I really
Yeah.
appreciate your coming up here
Thanks.
and sitting down with us.
yeah, no
Thank you.
worries. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah.
And
I'll see you coming
I'll
in
try.
out of
I'll
the
try not to
building.
disturb you next time I come down for coffee.
Okay. All right, Wayne.